Welcome into the Official Jets podcast.
Dangling a steak in front of a lion and you ain't got no cage in between you. He gonna get to that steak.
So let's go inside the matchup.
A motivated Aaron Rodgers is a dangerous Aaron Rodgers.
Game day and every day, score a jewelry touchdown with Kendra Scott. Shop fashion and fine jewelry fit for another winning season at your local store or at kendrascott.com. Shine bright, do good with Kendra Scott.
Bart, Scott, let's start on the positive side of things. How about Kenai Nwangu? What a performance coming up from the practice squad on Saturday. Kid has a kickoff return for a touchdown, 98 yards. Also forces a fumble that Brandon Eccles recovers. That sets up the Jets for 14 points.
Yeah, when you talk about paying attention to all three phases of the game, the three phases of the game is equally effective because they put points on the board and also gave an extra possession to the offense. You got to tip your cap to him. Way to introduce yourself to the Jet fans. I'm sure the Jet fans will be looking for more to come.
So, speaking of more to come, he was just signed to the active roster. So he's been on the practice squad since September, former fourth-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings since 2021. But he's been in the National Football League. But you never know when you're going to get your opportunity with the new team, and he took advantage of it big time.
And you talk about staying locked in, staying focused, being signed to the practice squad in September, having to sit the whole month of September, the whole month of October, the whole month pretty much of November, just waiting for the opportunity. And that's what football and life is always about. It's about timing. And we talk about luck and what that's all about. Luck is when opportunity meet preparation. And, he prepared and not knowing if that moment was ever going to come, but it came and he made sure he took full advantage of it. I mean, kudos to him.
How much love do you have for those guys who are making their hay on special teams? Nwangu comes in and he does it, but Herb Charles has really been one of the most consistent performers for the Jets throughout this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's been so good on special teams that, you have to, wonder if, will that spill over to opportunities to be able to, play a little bit of receiver. You talk about the physicality that's required, to play special teams, I'm sure he can go out there. He's a fast guy, can be a vertical guy. I mean, I remember guys like Jacoby Jones were, just special teamers and, got opportunities and made some of the biggest plays in NFL history when you think about the draft. Maybe when you think about the Super Bowl that the Ravens won, but you think about some of the 79-yard pass from Joe Flacco. So, I mean, You think that we all have a origin story, right? Whether it's James Hedderbold that was here for a while, whether it's Brad Smith, we all have an origin. And, when you come in and you're not a top 5 pick, a first-round draft pick, literally your path usually comes through special teams. And that's how you earn your opportunities.
Hey, your buddy Baldy was telling me he never saw anything like it because early on in that first quarter, Irv is lined up at gunner, Bart, and there are 3 guys charged to block him, but he still got down the field. He made the tackle.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he's in his bag. And, you think about Slayton that finally retired from the New England, who was always Slater, I believe.
Yeah, Slater.
Who was always penciled in as the representative for the AFC. Maybe a bright spot can be that Charles can have an opportunity. If he's garnering that type of respect from an NFC opponent, that everybody in the AFC knows about him. And for sure, everybody within the division knows about him. So maybe, sometimes what you do in the dark comes into the light. And, sometimes special team work and the grimy work in between gunner, wedge buster, punt team, return, sometimes that's considered in the dark. They cut into a commercial when that stuff is going on and you don't really get the accolades that you deserve. But, when people know you get that Pro Bowl next to your name, it's a very special thing and it'll stay with you for the rest of your life.
Man, I really thought it was going to be the Jets' day, considering what was happening on special teams. And when Seattle coughed up the kickoff return that Anders Carlson recovered, I thought this is it, man. The Jets are going to win this ball game after the bye and get some positive vibes.
Yeah, it was a lot of energy in the first half. And, sometimes, you talk about, the off-week self-scouting. They had some unique, different plays, putting Isaiah Davis out there, letting him come with the shuffle pass and being able to, add some wrinkles to the offense. Some shifts and motions were going on. It's just that, when they had Seattle down, they didn't step on their throats. They let them back in the game. Whenever you do that against any opponent, whether they were, struggling, kind of still sleepwalking from the time change, playing such an early game on the East Coast, they had opportunities to put the game away, and they just couldn't find a way to do it. And that's something that this team is going to have to learn how to do. When the football guys bounce you, give you a couple, good plays, things that don't normally happen, you got to take advantage of it. You got to make sure that teams can recover from those type of mistakes. Generally, when you have turnovers on offense and you have, special team turnovers, usually you don't win the game.
Yeah. Short term and long term, I know I have to look for the positives, but I'm serious here. I look at the Jets' offensive line and say, okay, you got Olu Fashanu lining up at left tackle here for probably the remainder of the season. Tyron Smith on injured reserve. I thought he played very well against the Seahawks. John Simpson has been an underrated performer throughout the year. You're a big fan of Joe Tippmann at the pivot, at the center position. You got Elijah Vera-Tucker at right guard. And then at right tackle, I know Morgan Moses has really been gutting some things out. Unfortunately, he left the ball game here against the Seahawks, but Carter Warren got in some valuable reps as well.
Yeah, Carter Warren's going to have to step his game up. It's hard to ever have to step in the game, down the middle of the game. And I thought he struggled a little bit. And that's kind of when the offense lost their tempo because it was getting early pressure. Sometimes you saw when a defender went underneath and Aaron Rodgers had to get out of the pocket immediately. When the quarterback has to worry about, the penetration from the defensive line, then that doesn't allow him to keep his eyes down the field because he's anticipating that, he's going to be under pressure. Carter is a guy that, the coaching staff thinks very highly of. He's going to have to come in and, if Morgan can't go, he's going to have to be the next man up. And what a tremendous opportunity for him to audition for potentially the right tackle position going forward.
Or at least being a swing guy down the line. But how about those four guys that I mentioned in Olu, Simpson, Tippmann, and then AVT? Because those guys figure to be your core for a while.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think at the end of the year, it's a decision that has to be made about Vera-Tucker. But you talk about, the other three, Simpson is signed to a long-term, extension. He's on the first year of his new contract. Tippmann's a guy that's going to be here. He's your draft pick and, Fashanu as well. So you think about, the consistency that you can have, with being able to have that left side of the line, kind of the future of that left side of the line secure. You'll just make a decision on Vera-Tucker. If you can have four guys that can work with each other, remember, for so long you had, maybe the revolving door was the left guard, but you had Brick, Mango, Brandon Moore, and Damon Woody for a long time, right? And, Faneca was there for a couple of years and he moved out. That was kind of like the part that continued. Slauson came in. But that's what you want. You want to be able to build that consistency and continuity with guys that kind of play with each other and kind of know how to feed off of each other.
Flipping the defensive line, I know we're going to talk about it at the end of the year, but listen, you do have Quinnen Williams in the middle. You do have Jermaine Johnson who's going to be coming back from the Achilles. And then also Will McDonald. Speak to Will. I know you like the steps he's taken, but you think that he can even get better. He's got 10 sacks on the year. He got 2 against Geno Smith.
Yeah, I mean, he went a long time. He was stuck on 8 for a long time. But, I mean, you talk about, the spin move, kind of gave up the edge a couple of times. But understanding that they're sitting on this spin move, for him to show that tremendous bend for the speed rush against Cross, who's one of the better pass-setting tackles in the league, was very impressive. And the fact that he's going over there and not Hassan going over there with the best, tackle that the opposing team has, which is the left tackle, their money position, he's making him, he's eat. You know what I mean? He's so fast, so twitchy, so bendy, right? He can bend those corners. And, listen, he may be a guy by the end of the year could get to 14. Because sometimes they come in bunches like he got the first ones, you know what I mean? And if the Jets can get ahead and get a lead, it's going to give them more opportunities when teams have to become predictable. But you think about, that coming back with Jermaine Johnson, then if they go and get that kid from Michigan sitting right there at D tackle, I mean, you talk about a formidable front, where you can solidify and have Jermaine Johnson tied up for a long time, Will's tied up for a long time, Quinnen's tied up for a long time. You put a big fatty right next to him. I think that's what you see when you look around this league. You got these big space eaters, guys that are, tremendous, opposite of that 4 technique or 5 technique. Like I said, I've been saying for a long time, I would love to see this team go to a 3-4. And, if that's going to be your big nose and Quinn is going to be your 5 technique and you can go out and get another, 3 technique or, like that. I mean, that, like the Trevor Price type or the Sean Ellis type. Man, I think you talk about going back to being dominant. I think that's the biggest thing is they haven't got that tackle opposite of Quinnen. And Quinnen is starting to be very disruptive, and I think that's because of the presence of Hassan Reddick, meaning that now you can't just double him because you create short edges, and then Will's doing his thing.
All right, timeout from Jets and NFL talk really quickly. We're still going to talk football here, but you just mentioned Michigan. What is your take, Mad Backer, a guy who always ran hot on the football field, when these college teams are celebrating a victory and bringing the flags out to the midfield?
I mean, it's just amazing to me that all of a sudden they got all this energy to fight when somebody's planting their flag. Like, oh my God, they stuck their flag in our, in the center of our logo. Well, if you don't want them to do that, then don't let them win. For me, I think you should do that. I mean, if you want to get them back the next year when you're playing them, if you win, you plant your flag. It's like watching somebody celebrate on your field. Like, if you don't want to see that, then you have 4 quarters to do something about it. I thought it's childish, on the
It was happening everywhere.
Yeah, I thought it's childish on a team that's losing to all of a sudden get emotional, like, oh my God, they're disrespecting my flag. So if they planted in the end zone and your name is in that part too, is that a problem? Or is it just somebody told you that it's disrespectful and you did it, right? You losing, you should be leaving the field anyway. Like, who cares? You should be going in and taking it in. Like, to me, like, I can remember going against T.O., and when he had celebrations when he was with the Eagles, and he hit the Ray Lewis dance in the end zone. And you talk about some of the most prideful people. You're mocking our leader, right? His famous dance, the squirrel dance. And what we said is, if we don't want to see that dance, then we shouldn't allow Terrell Owens to score. If he scores, you get to do whatever the hell you want. But just remember that, because when we score, we win, we're going to do the same thing. And it should go that way. That's like somebody having a celebration dance. Oh, he's celebrating it. He's not a professional. I like you've been there before. No. One of the hardest things to do in the world is to score a touchdown or get to the end zone. And I should be able, that comes from all week of work and preparation. If I want to do that, I should be able to celebrate and do a dance if I want to.
So to the victors go the spoils.
Yes. Like the fact that, Ohio State should worry about how they're not going to be in a Big Ten championship, how they spent $42 million or whatever they spent on NIL to buy the most expensive roster that money can buy. Michigan found a way to win despite that. And that's the beauty of it, right? That's the rivalry, right? It doesn't matter what the records are. Like, all Coach Sherrod had to do was win that game, and all sins are forgiven. And by the way, he has the number 1 quarterback in the league coming next year. So, I mean, I think really Ryan Day's days could be numbered, because it's no excuses now. You didn't lose to Harbaugh. Lost to a team that was, 6-5?
6-5, that's right. Yep.
Lost to a 6-5 team. Like, you should be ashamed. You should be embarrassed. Instead of fighting and compounding, you should have went there. And I thought Arizona State was funny. Like, that's what it is. Like, what am I supposed to do? You talk trash to me the entire game. Back and forth. Trash talk go back and forth for the entire game. I win. I can't do what I want to do. I got to have some pride and some class, but you've been talking trash for me for 4 quarters. And I'm sure that they were talking trash to Michigan because the game was close. And they came in thinking they were a superior team. So, like, that's my opinion on it. Like,
I just want to get your opinion because it happened everywhere. I'm a graduate of the University of Florida. I know the Gators were doing that.
Yeah, to Florida State.
Right. Yep.
But you don't think Florida State? What do you think Florida State was doing last year when they were undefeated? You don't think they were talking trash and like some of those players on there remember that? Like, ha ha ha! Yeah, now it's our turn. You guys stink this year.
The Official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Shop game day ready jewelry styles and so much more at kendrascott.com.
All right, let's go back to the Jets. We're going to make a quick transition here. Aaron Rodgers turned 41 on Monday. Interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich said he is going to remain our quarterback. He gives us the best chance at winning. Your thoughts when you heard that?
I mean, I thought, like if we could do this all over again, I would have put Aaron Rodgers. I would have preferred that Aaron Rodgers went on IR against Denver. If he was as beat up as they're alluding to, like I think the opportunity was that the Jets did a tremendous job in bringing in a backup quarterback, something that we didn't have last year in Tyrod Taylor. And I thought that if Aaron Rodgers wasn't healthy, that maybe he probably shouldn't have played, now when you're looking back at it, and got healthy so that we could see the best version of Aaron Rodgers. And I think that that's what teammates are all about. You look at what Jordan Love did. Jordan Love could have fought through the injuries that he had when he sprained his MCL. We thought he was going to be out for a long time, but Malik Willis stepped in and they won games. And I think sometimes you have to have that trust to say, hey, man, 100% of this guy is more than 70% of me. And you see C.J. Mosley's had to go through that a lot this year. Yep. He says, you know what, I don't want to let my team down. I know I'm injured. I can play, but I much rather let these guys play. And I thought that was something that maybe if we could do all over again, we would have did all over again. Because now what happens is you find yourself maybe potentially having to recruit your young players, right? Because if the play doesn't get better and the offense continues to struggle, y'all worry about guys like Brees and stuff like that. Brees didn't sound well after the game. He sounded dejected. And these are guys that, you're going to have to make decisions on pretty soon. And they're going to have, the ability to make moves and decisions themselves.
What do you make of Rodgers this season? 62.5% thrower for 2,627 yards, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Like you said, he's battled through injury, and he is such a competitor. He wants to go out there. He wants to win. He wants to lead this franchise to great things. So how do you think tell me what you've seen from him on the field, most specifically last game against Seattle, when things seem to be going well in that first half, but then, you mentioned the Leonard Williams interception, but the Jets couldn't get anything going in the second half.
Yeah, because I think they abandoned the run far too often. I mean, the offense should always go through Brees Hall. If you look at the majority of the NFL right now, the majority of the teams are running the ball 45% of the time. Now, you have a guy, a generational talent, in my opinion, like Brees Hall, that only gets 12 carries. And he was averaging 5 yards a carry, 12 carries, 60 yards. And, he had the fumble. That happens at times. And I know he fumbled twice and recovered one. But you talk about, you have to get the ball in his hands. That opens and unlocks everything else for everybody. That unlocks the play action. That also helps pass protection because the linebackers and everybody has to convert because they're coming off trying to make sure they hold their gaps. And then they're saying, I have to convert because it's a pass. So I think that, the game plan as far as not running the ball, you have to be committed to it, right? And I feel like, Downey did a great job in coming with different formations. The pony package was in early. They had plays off of it. But then when they got past their 15-play script, a lot of the motions and shifts kind of came off. And this is the first time in my time ever watching Aaron Rodgers to see him this inaccurate. You talk about, he's 62%. The majority of the league, the average is 65%. It's no way that Aaron Rodgers should be average of the league in any statistics because he's too much of a talent to ever a great thrower of the football. So that's why I'm thinking that it has to come off running the football and the play action to create, ability. You talk about, a 13 to 14-point swing from, the Garrett Wilson wide open to, Leonard Williams the next play. And, like some of these, you listen to some of these defenders, they're starting to have a narrative about Aaron Rodgers because he's been hit so much. They're saying that he's chucking and ducking. That's exactly what Leonard Williams said. They said, hey, when you get pressure on him, sometimes he throws the ball blindly. And, Leonard Williams, knew that. You talk about Van Ginkel. It's the same interception that Van Ginkel got, right, off of the same type of pressure. So you have to adjust to the adjustments that the league is making on you.
He threw some beautiful balls early in that game. It's so uncharacteristic watching what happened. And he pointed a finger at himself after the game, Bart. So, on the Garrett one where it's 21-7 inside the red zone, inside the 10-yard line, and then he misses that one, and the game changes like that. Instead of, to your point, 28-7, and, hey, maybe start the buses. It's 21-13, and here we go.
Yeah, because the team started believing it. You put energy back in the Seattle bench. But also, the cover zero throw to Devontae Adams. Not on target.
A 4th down play plus territory later in the half.
Right. Should have been like a nice moon ball, a catchable ball. A lot of his balls have been super flat and had a lot of steam on it. It doesn't leave a lot of room for error. There's a lot of times when you throw that ball under there, the receivers are so good they can make the adjustments. But when it's coming with so much steam, just like I said, it's uncharacteristic. Not used to seeing Aaron Rodgers throw the football like this. I'm used to seeing him hit his targets and be on the same page. Still, him and Devontae Adams still, off on certain things.
You emphasize that you like some of that play calling and some of the movement, what they were doing schematically early in the ball game. And then even in the second half, I love what they did with Garrett Wilson there on the first play coming out in the third quarter where, hey, schematically, we're just going to get the ball in his hands. He saw that.
Yeah, and also you can tell the effects of Fashanu being there, especially in the first half. They were willing and able to take vertical shots, and that's something we hadn't seen. We hadn't seen Aaron Rodgers take shots down the field. And, usually when that happens, I know the one with Devontae Adams later in the game got called back for offensive PI, but the guy, he man-turned the wrong way and gave his back there. So I don't know what, Devontae is supposed to do when he's running up this guy's back.
All right, so tell me your thoughts on the AFC East. The Bills just won their 5th consecutive division championship. Well, we were thinking all along, hey, Dolphins are going to be competitive this year. The Jets should be right there in the mix. Dolphins right now 5-7. Jets are going down to South Florida on Sunday. Jets are 3-9, and the Patriots are 3-10. How surprised are you that we're sitting here at the beginning of December, and that's what the landscape is?
Yeah, the fact that the Bills are able to secure the division, before the start of December pretty much is, discouraging, right? Because we thought it was going to be more competitive. Now, we understand why Miami wasn't as competitive is because of, the injury to Tua Tagovailoa. And they've been, decent since he's been back. I know they lost the last game, but, this is a team that looks at, the Jets. And for anybody that I've ever known that played there or anybody that ever coached there, they look at this as their rivalry game. So they look at this game like the Super Bowl. We look at the Patriots that way. They look at us like, hey, they're going to get up for this game. So they'll try and embarrass you, especially coming off of a embarrassing game for themselves where they look like they were frigid and cold dealing with Green Bay. They're going to be looking to get right and get some confidence. So you better be prepared when you go down there because they're going to be trying to send a message.
Long term, what do you see from those 3 teams? The Patriots are trying to build this thing with a very talented young quarterback in May, a guy that I've been awfully impressed with. I don't think I anticipated him to play this well early on in his career. Miami, they made the playoffs the last couple of years. It's going to be a long shot now. And you mentioned Tua's injury before and what they're going through. And then the Jets, the search has begun for a new GM and a new head coach.
Right, and that's always tough, right? It's instability with the Jets. The Patriots know who their coach is. They know who's their ownership, the general manager, all the leadership is there. You know that McDaniels. I always say it wrong, McDaniels. I think it's McDaniel. Is
Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, Mike McDaniels. And McDaniel is out in Seattle. I always mix it up. It's too many Mikes.
Yeah, a lot of Mikes.
But you think about McDaniel's going to be there. They're 2 years into this offense. They built the personnel to run this offense. We don't know what the Jets philosophy is going to be. If the players that are here, certain players are going to fit the scheme. You're going to move on from, and you have uncertainty at the quarterback position as well. You look at the other places, they outside of Tua and potentially his injury from his cases of concussions, everybody knows who's going to be who, and they have their franchise quarterback. We don't have ours. It's uncertain. So it's tough right now. We know that the Jets have a tremendous young core of talent, but, it could be a potential case where you're trying to get a new coach, new general manager, potentially a new starting quarterback, which is always difficult.
All right. Defensively, let's start with the positives. How about the goal line stand, man? They're never in until they're in.
Yeah, you talk about 8 players from the goal line.
That's great.
That's what you want to see. You want to see them blow their neck. You know what I mean? And that was tremendous. That was impressive to watch. You would hope that it wouldn't go to 8 because of the PI. Kind of push it back. I thought Sauce was having one of his better games, competing with one of the premier receivers, and I thought he got up for that game. but the fact that he couldn't finish kind of, I think, put a damper, and you think about that fourth down, and if that was Sauce, if that would have been different, if they would have let the boys play opposed to a superstar versus a, undrafted Canadian player. Sometimes that superstar player is going to get that call because he knew how to draw him into that penalty.
I'm glad you mentioned Sauce. He thought he was having one of his better games. What does that say about him as a competitor that he raised his level out there? Because he knew who he was going against. They talk about DK Metcalf and what he can do down the field and a vertical threat and a big-time guy. And I thought he rose to the challenge quite well.
Yeah, because I thought he knows that if he didn't bring his A game against DK is the type of dude that'll embarrass you. Right? He'll embarrass you and he'll make you look bad in front of everybody and physically dominating as well. So I thought Sauce knew that he had to be at an anchor. He had to be physical at the point. And I thought he competed at a high level. Yes, DK, had a catch, but, you talk about the goal line on the slant, being able to break that pass up and break some passes up on the goal line. I thought, that, they knew or they weren't too confident. They were more confident with Njigba, his matchups than they were about DK Metcalf. And that's a respect for the size and the defense radius of Sauce.
Yeah, that's really saying something. How about the drive, the game-winning drive that ended on the Charbonnet touchdown? The 4 penalties starting with 4th and 6. Seattle's punter's hurt. The Jets get caught with too many men on the field there. Then it's a 4th and 1. You just mentioned it before. You just alluded to it before. Sauce is out of the game, so Geno dials up a long ball to Metcalf. DK.
Right, off of play action, right? But you knew it would have been a pass, so they got you with play action because it was 4th and 1, but you knew you would have had an opportunity if you didn't have 12 men on the field, which, went from 4th and 6 to 4th and 1, right? So those are all self-inflicted wounds. You can't have that, especially when you're a team that hasn't won a lot of games. You can't kill yourself. And I thought they broke down when it was important the most, when that's when you're supposed to be the sharpest. That's situational football. Like, you have to understand, and if you're the corner on that near side, you got to run off the field. So when you go out there, you got to count. You got to count. And if you're Michael Carter and not Michael Carter. If you're Gibson or whoever the kick returner is, you got to be counting as you're walking out. And if you're counting, it doesn't matter if they're punting the football and nobody's back there, then the ball just falls down. They can't. It's not like, somebody has to catch it. So if you're the returner, it's your responsibility to count when you're walking out there. Like, oh man, we got 2 minutes. Let me run off, or let me tell the corner to run off, and I'll come up and play corner.
Yeah, and then later in the drive, Solomon Thomas is just going hard there. Unfortunately, he gets flagged for the horse collar.
I didn't agree with that because the horse collar is when you hold on and you take him to the ground with it, right? To me, he caught him between the nameplate. He came off the nameplate. And and then he tackled him around the legs, and then everybody else came. He slowed him down with that. Nobody says you can't put your hands there. You just can't drop your body weight. And when he dropped his body weight and he fell, his hands came off of the collar. So I didn't agree with that. But maybe
so that's the one you challenged the league on. I tend to agree with you there.
Yeah, but at this point, it's just one of those unfortunate things where it won't change anything.
And then before the touchdown, the 3rd and 6, McDonald got called for neutral zone infraction.
Yeah, bro, how your head is past the centers is beyond me. Like, rule of thumb, your hand goes in front and your head can't go in front of your hand. Like, you got to be able to say something. And whoever's the end man on the line of scrimmage on either side is supposed to say, get back, get back. Once again, that's not being accountable and not helping your brother out.
A lot of lessons for the young players, no doubt about that. As we look ahead now, Jets, Dolphins, Sunday. For years, we had that these two teams know each other's personnel quite well. McDaniels and Robert Saleh were on each other's staff. But now, with changes, what do you expect Miami offense versus Jets defense now?
They're still going to have the intel because they know the defense that they're playing. Olbrich was there, so he knows, how they respond. It's not like they have a new defensive coordinator.
Yep.
So I think that stays the same. I think on the other side is where it gets interesting because you got to see how they respond to Downing and what his what his game plan is. I know Anthony Weaver's defense coordinator there. He's going to be aggressive. He has those guys playing at a high level. And Jalen Ramsey is a guy that, I'll pay to see him and Devontae Adams go at it one-on-one.
That should be fun. But if Jalen's going to Devontae, that means who's going to Garrett?
I mean, I haven't got deep into my prep. I forget who their second cornerback is.
I know, but my point on that is that
but with that being said, you have to do a good job in establishing a run.
Yep.
Then you have to do a good job, and I think they waited too late to really get Garrett involved in the game. Like, you got to get Garrett the ball early in the game. It's got to be a converted effort to get him some touches. I feel like sometimes, we could say that you don't know who's the number one. You confuse and think that Devontae Adams is the number one when Garrett Wilson's supposed to be the number one. And that's always a tough conversation to have because Garrett was the number one before Devontae came. And now it seems like a lot of the game plan is to get Devontae the ball where that shouldn't be the case.
So the way you view it as an analyst, co-ones here?
No, it can't be co-ones. Like, it's not Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It's T. Higgins and it's Jamar Chase first and T. Higgins. It's not Addison and
Jefferson.
And Jefferson. It's Jefferson. And I think that, that was already established. So, like, that's why he's playing the X. You're supposed to get most of the juice. So you got to try and get him the ball early.
Yeah. Garrett Wilson, a fantastic season. Going down to South Florida to face the Dolphins. To your point, as far as the cornerback position with the Dolphins, they'll line up with Fuller as their second cornerback.
Kendall Fuller's a good corner. Formerly of Washington, right?
Yep. And listen, Holland is one of the better safeties out there in that defensive backfield as well. They've been stopping the run quite well so far this year in Miami.
Yeah, because they're bringing a lot of the Ravens' principles in fronts as well. They go to those 3-4 type of fronts, those reduced and under fronts that Anthony Weaver, learned from Rex Ryan. That makes it really difficult. And if you run, you have to run open to the bubble. And to do that, if you got a War Daddy in there, then he can junk it all up. And the safety, if you have a good safety, can come down weak, and you can solidify that side. It makes it very difficult to run on.
On the other side of the ball, can you speak to the challenge as far as your eyes are concerned? You always have spoken about that in the past, what they try to do to mess with your discipline.
Well, of course, you're going to get an array of shifts and motions, and you're going to get Tua turning his back to the defense and turn around and try to throw timing routes behind the linebackers. So the linebackers going to have to play with tremendous depth, and they're going to have tremendous eye discipline. You're going to get a lot of shifts and motions trying to get your eyes looking one way so they can run the ball right down your throat. This is a team with Achane and Mostert who has had success running the ball against the Jets, and the Jets better be ready because these are guys that if they get to the second level, like Breece Hall, you're not catching them.
Give me 3 Jets who have to shine Sunday. Have to.
It has to be Quinnen. It has to be Sauce and DJ Reed. I put them as one. Could you think about the potent passing attack with Waddle and Tyreek? And I think it has to be fashionable. He has to make sure that he can make Aaron Rodgers feel secure so that he can go through his progressions and understand that he has more time than he thinks.
I'll tell you what, Tua's been throwing the ball a lot to his backs and his tight end, Jonas Smith. Smith against Green Bay, every other play was going to him across the middle.
Because teams are taking Tyreek and Waddle away, so he's the next guy that you have to worry about. He's a guy that's actually playing a lot better than he was, when he was with the Patriots. Yes, he has a quarterback that's going to get him the ball in rhythm and timing. They're doing a good job at featuring him because he's one of the better yak type of tight ends in the league. Reminds me a lot of a version of Isaiah Likely, a guy that can run routes, but that can run after the catch too.
Good, Backer.